bring in retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmitt from Washington, D.C. He's the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs and spent 9 years as military attaché to NATO. Mark, good to see you.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Good, thanks. Let's put this into non-military layman's terms. These are Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarines. Apparently, the initial buy by Australia is only going to be up to 5 of them. So what do these do? What are the capabilities of a Virginia-class nuclear submarine, and why are these considered so important, especially since there's only going to be a handful of them?
Well, first of all, you've got to understand that a submarine can carry a significant amount of ordnance. So a small number still has a very, very large effect. Being nuclear, they're far quieter, but more importantly, they can stay undersea for much, much longer than, say, an old diesel type of submarine, which would oftentimes have to come up to the surface to recharge its batteries. So this is a very, very advanced capability, and 5 for that region at this point seems to be sufficient when you add in the capabilities that the United States and other countries.
People often get confused. These are nuclear-powered submarines. Do they ever carry nuclear weapons?
That's usually a classified subject, but I think everybody realizes that the nuclear triad of the United States includes ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, fighter bombers that can carry nuclear weapons, and as do our nuclear submarines.
Okay, so with this deal, we're talking up to 5 bought initially by Australia. And then after that, Australia is going to develop some of its own using technology from both the US and the UK. So how would this capability then stack up against what China has in the region?
Well, I'd like to say it would make a decided advantage over the Chinese capability, but the Chinese have been rapidly increasing their defense budgets, increasing their capabilities. As recently as 15 years ago, China had very, very little capability, but they're using a lot of money and a lot of technology that, candidly, they've stolen from other countries to enhance their defense capabilities, and more importantly, their offensive capabilities to take over the straits, as well as make a significant threat to Taiwan.
You know, very recently we heard a top general in the U.S. predict in an internal memo that the U.S. would engage militarily with China by the year 2025. It's pretty terrifying to see that written on paper, especially as an internal military memo. What do you think of that?
Well, there are more generals than there are members of Congress. There are 535 members of Congress. All of them have an independent view. All of them make predictions. But I would certainly not believe that the voice of one general represents the policy of the United States, nor does it necessarily predict what's going to happen in the future.
You know, China's actions in the Indo-Pacific have only pushed these countries closer together. They've built collaboration. They've established more U.S. assets in that region. That's exactly what China does not want. Is it going to see that as it provokes some of its neighbors, this is what it's going to get?
Yeah, that's why I was laughing when I first came on, because that was a Sergei Lavrov line as well.
Yes.
Forming these blocks. These are not blocks that we're going out and recruiting countries for. These are blocks that are coming to the West to protect them, to give them security guarantees against a very aggressive Russia, as we're seeing in Ukraine, and against a very aggressive China, as we're seeing in the Indo-Pacific region. So, as you said, it is a problem of their own creation. President Biden said Putin wanted to cause the Finlandization of NATO, to break it up. But in fact, what happened is Finland and Sweden are now joining NATO, an organization more unified now than it has been in the last 50 years.
Right, which from a Western sense is good, but it's also worrying because many people look at this all as the you know, lines being drawn and alliances shoring up and everybody building up their militaries as if we're building up for something really big, and tensions rise. I mean, what's going to defuse this sense?
Well, first of all, I think it would have to be a recognition on the part of Russia that their aspirations for returning the Russian Empire for expanded territorial um, um, expansion and influence just isn't going to happen. But I think we've got to recognize that in many ways, this holiday from history that we have taken since the end of the Cold War it may be over. We now see a very aggressive China. We now see, obviously, a very aggressive Russia. And this may be becoming a multipolar world again, if not a bipolar world, as China and Russia are beginning their romance that we haven't seen since Kissinger broke China away from Russia in the 70s.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. Mark, always good to hash it out with you. Thank you.
You too, Michelle. Bye bye.